everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is our girl Rosie. Now she's going to be joining The View. That's coming up very shortly. She's been blogging about it like there's no tomorrow.
I'm more curious about that, so I'll check that out for the first few days at least.
Rosie,
I liked Rosie when she had her own show, but I'm very curious to see whether or not this is a train wreck with all of them on there together. And I want to see how much. Now, in the beginning, she'll probably curb herself, but I imagine that down the road, she's gonna open up her mouth on the things that she's most passionate about in a way that she could never do on her own show, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I thought she did open up her mouth on her own show when the show was going off. She blew up at what's his name that time, Selleck.
Yeah, I don't remember. If that, I don't know if that was in the last season or not, but she didn't do that every day. Had she gotten political every day, the show would have ended a lot sooner than it did.
Well, Musto talked about that she never, it was kind of like Ellen, okay.
Absolutely.
Once Ellen got on the talk show, she was just another talk show host, and Rosie in those days was the queen of nice, which I knew was an act, by the way, but that's another story. She was the queen of nice. She didn't turn whatever it is she turned, as memory serves me correctly, until after that show was over.
Well, one of the other interesting things is when she had her daytime show, she always talked about the kids that she had, but very rarely did she mention her partner.
Yeah, but didn't Musto say that he outed her and she called him a something or other Nazi? Remember when we had Musto on?
Yeah.
She denied she was gay for a period
on her show.
Yeah.
I don't remember a day when she ever really said me and Kelly or me and my partner. You know, she didn't throw that in the faces of her mainstream audience.
Right. I understand that, but my point is, it seems to me that Musto said that at some point he outed her. Right. I remember at what point in her career, and she called him some sort of a fascist or Nazi for having done so, and practically denied same. Am I wrong on that history?
I don't remember everything he said, but I just know that in that last season she wrote the book. She did 2020 or whatever it was with Barbara Walters and started coming out of the closet.
Oh, is that how it came? Now, let me ask another question. Did her show go off of her own volition?
The show had worn down in the ratings after a number of years, and so I think they decided it was time to wind. Well, I don't know about forced, but if it was forced, it was because the show was declining in popularity.
Well, the other show I never could figure out why it went off the air, and what is he doing? I haven't seen him in ages. We talk about talk shows and who revolutionized this and who revolutionized that. And Steve Allen was the founder of late-night television. The stuff that David Letterman does today is merely a variation of what Steve did 30, 40, 50 years ago. But trivia question, or just a television culture question. Who is the talk show guy that really changed the way that television talk shows, specifically the late-night talk shows, were done? Who was it?
Arsenio Hall.
Absolutely.
And I was talking to one of the ladies that does a report, Hollywood report. I was talking with her on the phone a few weeks ago, and I said, you know, the guy I really miss in late night is Arsenio Hall, because he brought the party. He brought a different atmosphere to the whole thing. And if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, the fact that he started to grab the younger audience and if it affected Carson.
Yeah.
And Carson's numbers, and that's when Johnny said, maybe it's time.
It was the last few years that Carson, who was not into rock, was not into contemporary anything, but Carson did make an effort the last few years. Johnny still beat the bejeebers out of everybody, even demographically, but Arsenio made fantastic inroads, and he just revolutionized everything. Did he go off of his own volition?
He went away for a while. He would come back periodically and host different TV specials for, like the Soul Train anniversary show. Then, a couple years back, he came back and did Star Search, a revamped Star Search.
After McMahon.
Right. And that lasted, I want to say, just one season. And then they canceled that. Where he is now, I have no idea.
Haven't seen him in ages.
No, I mean, he doesn't even pop up on Leno anymore, really. He used to do guest shots on Leno every once in a while, but he's been staying out of the spotlight. He hasn't made any movies lately.
My take on that, I didn't think he was good.
I'm not saying whether he was good or bad. He wasn't my cup of tea because he wasn't trying to.
That's why he's not no longer on.
No. He wasn't. That's not true. He was not my cup of tea.
I
was not the demographic that he was looking for, but I watched the show and I thought, for what this guy is doing, we used to talk about this. What this guy was doing, he was brilliant at it. And again, that he wasn't appealing to me. He wasn't trying to appeal to me. He was trying to appeal to a much younger demographic. What do you watch besides Law and Order?
Oh, I was just telling Laurence what I watched.
What?
Matlock, Diagnosed for Murder.
Oh, that's right. You like all those shows.
Yeah, and Murder, She Wrote, Columbo, Perry Mason.
Are you watching? Elaine is a charter member of the of the what is
TV
that thing?
Land.
Yeah.
No, it's the Hall of
is,
Fame
the
channel,
Hall of
Hallmark
Fame
channel, the Hallmark
and
channel.
Hallmark.
The Hallmark channel. Somebody was telling me that they were running on the Hallmark channel. You would be too young to remember these. Elaine might not remember. There was a show years ago called My Little Margie with Gail Storm. Well,
I
folks,
remember that.
That's My Little Margie. And they're running that, and they're also running this ancient show with Jim Backus called I Remember Joan.
Oh,
or
yes.
I Married Joan. I'm sorry. With,
I played that song
Yes.
when we were
Joan,
doing the
exactly.
Debbie bit.
Exactly.
Yes.
Joan Davis.
That's
This
on.
must be 50 years old. Jimmy Haller was the one who told me about it. I said, "My God, I can't believe they're actually. I
remember
doing
all
this."
those shows.
Well, now Elaine, so you and I are.
The Goldbergs. You
Oh,
remember them?
Well, let me back up. The Goldbergs were on radio until 1960, and I remember them more on radio and a little bit on television. She used to stick her head out the window and
And
go,
say-
"You-hoo, anybody," or "You-hoo, Mrs. Bloom," or
Yes.
something like that.
I tell you what touched me the other night on the Emmys is when they did the tribute to Aaron Spelling having passed.
Yes.
How
And
did that go?
they showed the clips of all the shows that he's produced. And I know to a lot of people this will sound really stupid, but I don't care. You liked what you liked.
Right.
A lot of those shows that he produced were stuff that I watched when I was a kid growing up. So, it just kind of took
And
me.
you
And
can't-
then to have the original Angels come
Right,
out, I wasn't
the
expecting
Angels.
to see that
Somebody
at all.
told me though, I saw a picture of them, and God knows they've taken care of themselves body-wise, but boy, there was a lot of cosmetic surgery on that
and
stage.
yeah,
Oh,
nothing,
yes.
nothing new about that, but I was just glad to see him. But
Sure.
my favorite is Kate Jackson. She's the one I thought was the best looking.
What about?
I think Jacqueline Smith is better looking than all of them.
I'm not. I wasn't a fan of the show, but I want to ask you, how did the thing with Dick Clark go? I was told that I did. I caught clips of
he
this, and I was
came
told
on.
he's in bad shape.
He is.
the worst you will have ever seen.
Yes.
Yeah. You know that look, the eyes start to get a little bugged out when it's not good.
And he was doing. I mean, hey, the
I
perennial.
congratulate him for having the guts to do that because I think it's kind of a Dick Clark thing not to do. I don't think he
Right.
would have necessarily done it before, but I think it's really brave to come out on the stage like
It
that.
is brave.
And they didn't show him walking.
No,
he was already
sitting.
seated.
Well, it was brave. It was brave on a number of levels. I know enough about Dick Clark. God, Dick Clark has been a part of my life since I was about 10
And I was
years
going to
old.
mention that to you. Is there anybody else who was on the air on TV who got to see so many different groups and bands of generations come along? You know what I mean? And host the shows.
Bandstand.
Ed Sullivan. How long was Ed Sullivan on?
Sullivan was
Ooh.
on from 1949
Long
to
time.
1973.
Okay, so he had a good
But
transition.
Dick Clark, the thing about Clark is that Clark has been part of the national consciousness.
Right.
Since October the 10th, 1957.
Jeez.
We are coming up with 49 years
Yep.
that this man has been a part of the public consciousness. Stop and think about
I
it.
did.
The guys who come and go.
Right.
Let me ask you another question. Can you think of anybody with the possible? I'm sure there are many. Clint Eastwood has been around. Well, Clint Eastwood, Rawhide was 58, 59. So he's been a part of the national consciousness a long time, too.
Right.
But who else is there? Tony Bennett is a singer. There ain't many. What I'm trying to say is there ain't many guys still working
Right.
who have been around as long as Clark and had it. And keep in mind that Clark in 19. How old is he now?
He's in his 70s, isn't he?
I want to say he's going to be 77, 78, something like that.
I think he's in his 70s.
And just to take it one step further about Clark, okay, I mean, Frankie Chadwick, God bless him, is still working, doing mobile DJing or whatever in town. I don't know if he's
he
on the
had
radio
a
or
brain.
not. But my point is, that was years ago. The point is that Dick Clark was there from the beginning of
Yes.
rock and
Yeah.
roll.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was there. I mean, the Bandstand show, he actually took the Bandstand show over in 56, and the thing went national in 57. He was there at the very beginning, and he was still talking about music. I actually had a top 40 radio show a la Casey Kasem
Yes.
up until about 6, 7, 8 years ago. That is amazing in and of itself. But just to go back to that for a second, who else is there that's still working, who's been around for 50 years? Not many. I mean, there are a few, but
I know. I don't know how. I don't remember when Soul Train started, but certainly.
Oh,
not
that's
50
much
years.
later.
No. I
much
understand
later.
that, but I'm saying Don Cornelius as an example of somebody who has watched these groups over the decades
yeah.
come and go. He's back in the Spinners, and then in the '80s, and then in the '90s. And even though he stopped hosting his show years ago,
And he was a big. He and Dick Clark had a very good relationship because he credited Clark, obviously, with coming up with the. Well, Clark did not invent the concept. It was just that the show. The funny thing about American Bandstand, the reason ABC put it on is they had nothing else to put on. They were barely the number 3 network, and this show was cheap. The only one you had to pay was
But
Dick
it
Clark.
went big.
So they put it on in the afternoon, and every teenager in America went nuts over the show.
Yep.
And in the early days, people scoffed, well, they've got great ratings, but they're all young people watching. This is in the day when 15, 16-year-olds were not considered to be part of the Madison Avenue advertising business because who pays attention to them? It wasn't until years later that some idiot said, my God, give me the 16-year-olds. They control the purse strings inside the house.
And to also watch something that's kind of on the periphery, to watch how the dancing changes over the decades. Because, what is it they used to say when they went to dance? Leave room for the Holy Ghost and, be careful how you gyrate. Well, once MTV came around, the 80s, it's like everybody's dancing like they're on a pole.
All I know is Soul Train is still on GN.
But I used to run home from school and watch Bandstand.
Really?
Oh, yeah, American Bandstand.
I can imagine.
I knew everybody on there. I knew how they dressed. They dressed sharp.
I was in love with...
I'd look at those outfits.
I was in love with Franny Giordano. Remember her?
No, who?
Justine Corelli. Oh, I loved her. Arlene O'Sullivan. I know my Bandstand. We'll be back. Stay close.